Welcome to the Gentle Ledger. Today is Wednesday, February 25th, 2026 in U.S. market time. The mood felt like a busy group chat that finally stopped arguing and started sending the same "okay, fine" thumbs up. Now, let's turn softly to the U.S. indexes. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 0.63%, finishing at 49,482.15. The S&P 500 added 0.81%, closing at 6,946.13. And the Nasdaq Composite led the room up 1.26%, ending at 23,152.08. And for the smaller company pulse, the Russell 2000 edged higher by about 0.4%, closing near 2,671.25. The texture of the day was not frantic. It wasn't a chase. It was more like the market deciding to sit up straighter, smoothing its shirt, and remembering that optimism can still be worn without making a scene. Gently moving into the corporate highlights. In large cap tech, Nvidia rose 1.4%, continuing to act like a lighthouse for the AI-linked portion of the market. Steady enough to pull sentiment forward even when the broader coastline still looks foggy. In a very different corner of the tape, Cava surged 26.4%, a sharp, bright move that felt like a sudden burst of flavor, one of those days where a single earnings-related storyline can turn a stock into a small celebration. Staying with strong upside, Axon climbed 17.6%, lifted by results that impressed investors and reinforced the sense that certain mission-critical government and enterprise-linked businesses can still surprise to the upside in a market that's been picky. But the day also had its heavier notes. GoDaddy fell 14.3%, a swift drop that read like a guidance disappointment being priced in all at once, without much negotiation. And in the renewable space, First Solar slid 13.6%, pulled down by weaker than expected annual sales guidance. One of those reminders that long-term themes can still have short-term air pockets. In retail, Lowe's declined 5.6%, also after softer annual sales guidance, and the reaction spread beyond a single ticker, because home-linked optimism tends to move as a family, not as an individual. And on the consumer staples side, the mood turned a little more sober. Brown-Forman dropped 7.6%, and Molson Coors fell 4.8% as the alcohol group absorbed unsettling signals from the category's broader outlook. Taken together, these moves created a very particular kind of balance. There was enough excitement to keep risk appetite awake, and enough disappointment to keep it from getting loud. Overseas, in Asia and Europe, the mood carried across gently, and what's striking is how the same theme, less panic, more breath, showed up in different accents. In Japan, the Nikkei 225 rose 2.2%, a stronger than average lift that echoed the day's tech-friendly tone. In Hong Kong, the Hang Seng gained about 0.66%, closing around 26,765.72, a quieter step upward, less of a leap, more of a careful return to balance. In mainland China, the Shanghai Composite added about 0.72%, finishing near 4,147.23, extending a steady, almost methodical climb. In Europe, the tone was notably constructive. The StoxX 600 rose 0.7%, closing at a record 633.47, with markets leaning into a broadening out feeling where gains aren't confined to one single story. When you place these moves beside the U.S. close, the global picture feels consistent. In commodities and bonds, the story shifted quietly, and here the tone becomes less about excitement and more about what investors choose to hold when they want steadiness. Gold moved higher, with spot prices around $5,206.40 an ounce, rising on the day. Oil was more restrained. U.S. crude hovered around $65.71 a barrel, slightly higher on the day, while Brent sat near $70.10. And in U.S. Treasuries, the 10-year yield was about 4.05%, a small move that reads as stability rather than drama. Turning now to the newer corners of finance, in crypto land, Bitcoin was around $64,074, a level that felt less like a headline and more like a temperature reading, warm enough to signal confidence, not hot enough to burn. Ethereum was near $2,079, moving with that familiar pattern. When the broader risk mood softens, ETH often follows, like the second note in a chord. Crypto today didn't feel isolated. It felt braided into the same story the stock market was telling, one where investors were willing to lean forward again, just a little after a stretch of tense posture. And now for a reflective summary and outlook. Just 2 short paragraphs and no forecasts, only the emotional contour of what the day actually felt like. Today's market read like a collective decision to stop rehearsing the worst-case scenario. Not because the risks disappeared, but because attention drifted back toward fundamentals, toward earnings reality, toward the simple truth that innovation can be disruptive without being instantly destructive. So tonight, let the closing numbers sit where they are, higher but not hysterical, strong in tech, mixed in the everyday economy, and steadier overseas than the headlines might suggest. Good night.